Hello, my name is Rye, and welcome back to the channel. I hope that you're all having another amazing day, and before we get into the video, of course make sure to check out the description, where I have 3 links for you. I have a link to the official Instagram for Battle Cores, I have a link to the GameCrafter.com where you can buy packs of the game, and I also have a link to a playlist that has all of these videos in it. Anyway, as I'm sure that you saw with the title, this video is going over Set 1's support cards, particularly this being part 2. And the first card that we're going to be going over is called Potato Blight. Potato Blight is a price 2 boost card, so a support card that can only be activated during your main and end phase, not during the battle phase, and only on your turn. It is a price 2 boost card that allows you to quick summon, so summon for free, aka put down on the board for 0 points and nothing else. Quick summon 1 potato monster from your ground zone. That card gains +1/+0 and is considered an undead. Okay. Let's get into it step by step. Of course, price 2 is a good bit for a support card, but it's not too awful bad, and the benefit that you get is actually quite nice. It is very similar to another card that I'll be going over at the end of the video called Last Respects. Anyway, so you get to basically just reuse some of your potato monsters. Now it does only work on this one archetype, so it is very specific, but there are some other benefits that you get for it being so specific in its use cases. So, not only do you get the potato monster back for free from the ground zone, aka the discard pile, but that card also gains +1/+0, so an additional power, letting it hit a little harder. And you change the secondary descriptive typing from plant to undead. Since all potato monsters are nature plant types, you'd basically just be changing it to a nature undead. Now, that undead changing, though it thematically makes sense, is a nerf, technically. Especially because of how important a card called Flower Power is in the kind of decks that these potato cards would end up in, being Tree Vitality. Obviously, the nature type, or the undead type, does not matter. That secondary typing does not matter for Tree Vitality, which is why it's not that bad. Where things really start getting a little iffy is with Flower Power being one of the other main boosting options, which does care a lot about the descriptive typing because it only works with plant monsters. If you're undead, then you're no longer a plant type, which means that you'd no longer be being buffed by Flower Power, which definitely is a bummer. But it's not that bad, especially when you're able to get additional uses out of key potato monsters, especially being the main monster of the potato archetype. The one that is kind of the face of it, at least in my mind, is Super Potato. As well as Super Potato being a very, very good card in Tree Vitality decks. But yeah, so Potato Blight is definitely a decent card, and I would consider worth running at 1, 2, at most 3 copies. I would not consider a full playset of 4 or anything. But it could definitely be worse. And why not? You know, being able to get additional uses out of Super Potato is pretty nice. Anyway, on to the next card, and that is Call of the Beast. Call of the Beast is a price 0 boost card, so it's completely free. And what it does is your active beast cards gain +1/+1 until the start of your next turn. Okay, let me just go ahead and get this out of the way. Price 0 is phenomenal. So no matter what benefit you get out of it, is going to be pretty good in comparison because you literally pay nothing to get it. You just say, I activate this card, and that's it. You don't need any points. Now, in a competitive sense, this isn't a super widely seen card right now. At least in set 1, that is. Mainly just because of the lack of support for beast cards. And there are a good couple beast cards in set 1. Some notable ones being Beast of Hunger and Biddle, and that's about it for notable, but there are other ones such as stuff like Blubbertooth and Swamp Serpent, and that might be all. There are also some legend cards being Slither King and Grieving Rager as beast type legend card options to buff with it. So there are a good couple beast cards to use. It's just most of them aren't super competitive. But if you're not looking at this in a competitive sense, it's actually quite a phenomenal card because since there are quite a few beasts. Oh yeah, I forgot Beemo. Beemo's another beast card or beast monster. My apologies. But because there are quite a few beast cards, and for the most part they're not that hard to get your hands on, and Call the Beast itself is not exactly very difficult to get your hands on either, it's actually a pretty nice little combo, especially if you're trying to just build a quick and cheap deck that you're not too worried about being competitive, you're just trying to learn the basics of the game or just throw something together quick to play with some friends. Call of the Beast, along with, of course, beast monsters to buff with, is a pretty good and very simple strategy. The most complex thing you need to understand is when's the best time to use your Call of Beast, because you only have at most 4 of them in a deck. It makes a pretty simple and easy to understand little strategy. You just summon as many beast monsters as you can whenever you can, and then buff them up with Call of the Beast when it is a good time to swing in with them. Pretty simple. It is primarily offensively useful, but because it provides not just +1 power but +1 armor as well, and it lasts until the start of your next turn, then it does have some defensive capability because that 1 extra armor could be the difference between your beast monster being taken out or surviving. So definitely something to consider, but it is primarily offensive, and it's a pretty solid card for that role. And also, I have to say, I absolutely love the artwork. I'm not entirely sure why I love it so much, but I just think it looks really nice. Anyway, that's Call the Beast. And before we get into the next card, I would like to ask you to very quickly like, subscribe, comment, share, hit the bell, do all that YouTube stuff. And enough with that, let's go ahead and get back into the video. Upstart Force. Upstart Force is the next card that we're going over. It is a price 2 trap card. So trap cards can only be activated during the battle phase, but they can be activated during either player's turn. Again, just only during the battle phase, not during the main or end phase. But yeah, so it's a price 2 trap card that says, your active cards gain +2/+2 and speed until the start of your next turn. Your cards cannot attack directly this turn. Okay. This is kind of like Call of the Beast, but it gives even more benefit, and it works on all of your cards, all of your monster cards. It gives double the stat buff. Instead of being +1/+1, it's +2/+2. And it gives speed. Speed, just in case you don't know, basically just says, or well, not even basically, it literally just says, this monster gains an additional attack during the battle phase. So you gain 1 free attack. Again, for free. +2/+2 and an additional attack. So all of your cards are guaranteed to attack, whereas with Call of the Beast, if they don't have active, or they haven't waited until the next turn, or they don't have speed, that is, then they're not going to get a whole lot of use out of that +1/+1. With Upstart Force, you're guaranteed to at least get one attack out of all of your monsters. What's the biggest drawback with this card? Well, in a competitive sense, is that it's priced 2, which is a little expensive for what you're getting. And your cards cannot attack directly. So it's only going to be useful for attacking the opponent's monsters, not attacking them directly for damage, because when this is active, you can't do that. That's probably the biggest drawback. Now, does that make it necessarily unplayable? I don't think I'd go that far, but it is definitely a harder sell for a spot in your deck if you, well, not if you, but with this drawback. But taking a step back from the competitive sense, it's definitely not a bad card. I think it's pretty cool, pretty fun, pretty nice. I quite like it, honestly. And if you're not talking about it competitively, then it's definitely not a bad option. I'd say go for it, run a couple copies. Heck, run both Call of the Beast and Upstart Force in a beast-focused deck and just kind of go crazy if you want to. I'd say its best use scenario or best use case is probably in board breaking. So if the opponent has an established board, you can activate this to just swing all of your monsters and hopefully take out quite a few monsters, if not their entire board, just in a single battle phase. And it's pretty unique because it's the only card in set 1 that can really do this to this extent. And because it can do it just like that, just immediately, because it immediately gives them all speed, and so they can all just attack immediately without having to worry about it, it's actually quite a solid card. Again, the biggest drawback is just that it can't attack directly, but it can definitely be worked around, and if you use it in the right situations, it can definitely be worth the downsides of having to pay 2 points for it and the inability to attack directly. Anyway, the next card and last card for this video is the previously mentioned Last Respects. Last Respects is a price 3 boost card that allows you to quick summon one monster from your ground zone. That card is considered undead. Okay. Obviously, this card's most direct competition and comparison is Potato Blight. What's the difference between the two? Well, Last Respects is 1 point higher, and it doesn't give +1 power. But the upside is that it works on any monster. You can do it for any monster, not just potato monsters. That's the biggest difference and the biggest upside. And just because of how wide the use cases are for it, because it can be used on any main deck monster, means that it's worth running at 1, maybe 2 copies at most in most decks. Well, at least decks that don't plan on winning in 1 or 2 turns, that is. But decks like that don't really exist in set 1. But yeah, it's definitely not a bad card, and it's definitely worth consideration. I would not advise running 3 or even a whole playset of 4, similar to Potato Blight, but it's definitely not a very bad card. And obviously the biggest downside, besides for the high price, is changing to undead. But most of the time that doesn't really matter. That only really matters in 3 main situations I can think of off the top of my head. That being when using Flower Power, when using Call of the Beast, or when using Crazed Mask, which is a card that I'll go over later. But that's not really a massive issue. And even if you do have those situations, it can still be worth running. Especially if it's a more expensive card than 3. Because then you're able to actually get it out for a lower price than what the card's initial price is. Definitely an interesting card and not bad by any means, so I'd say consider it, but it's also not exactly game breaking or anything crazy, so I also understand leaving it out. Anyway, that is all that I've got for this video, and so I pray that you all have a blessed day, and fare thee well.